Good morning, students. Our today's topic is plant life cycles and alternation of generations. As angiosperm is deleted from our course, so next topic is plant life cycle. As shown in the diagram, plant life cycle can be of three types: haplontic, diplontic, and haplodiplontic. The first A diagram shows the haplontic life cycle. Haplontic life cycle is mainly shown by the algae. Here the dominant phase is gametophytic, that is have n number of chromosomes. The gametophyte produces gametes by mitosis. Because it is n in number, it produces gametes also by mitosis. These gametes then fuse. Fusion occurs, that is syngamy occurs, fertilization occurs, which results in the formation of zygote. Zygote is 2n, diploid. That represents a small sporophytic phase. The zygote then divides by meiosis and forms haploid spores. These spores germinate and again form the plant body. So in this haplontic and diplontic life cycle is there. Alternation of generation also is present. Main plant body is gametophytic and short-lived zygote represent the sporophytic phase, and this shows alternation of generation. Next is diplontic life cycle, that is shown by gymnosperms and angiosperms. Their main plant body is sporophytic, which is 2n. This sporophytic plant body by meiosis produces the gametes. So meiosis produces the gametes. The gametes then grow in size and form a gametophyte. The gametophyte then on the gametophyte, gametes are produced, which on fusion forms the zygote. The zygote then grows and form sporophyte. In this also alternation of generation is present, that is sporophytic generation alternates with the gametophytic generation and gametophytic generation alternates with the sporophytic generation. That is 2n alternates with the n generation and n again alternates with the 2n. Here the main dominant phase is sporophytic phase. That main life cycle consists of dominant phase, that is sporophytic phase. That is why it is known as diplontic life cycle. In haplodiplontic life cycle, as shown by the Bryophyta and Pteridophyta, already you have studied that. In here the main plant body is gametophytic. As in the case of bryophytes, the parent body produces gametes by the process of gametogenesis. Then syngamy or fertilization occurs, which produces zygote. So here it is 2n structure. The zygote then develops into sporophyte. The sporophyte undergoes meiosis. It produces spore mother cells. By meiosis, it produces spores. The spores germinate and produce the gametophytic plant body again. That you have studied in the case of bryophytes. In case of pteridophytes, the dominant phase is sporophyte. From the same diagram only, the dominant phase is sporophytic. It produces spores by meiosis. The spores then germinate and form the gametophyte. On the gametophyte, gametes are produced, and after fertilization, zygote is produced, and that zygote grows into sporophyte. Means same diagram, this seek diagram, same is for bryophytes and pteridophytes. The lower part shows, the pink color shows, that is the bryophyte. The main plant body is bryophyte, and above part sporophyte shows that above part is shows the life cycle of the pteridophytes. So in the case of bryophytes, the dominant phase is gametophytic, means more than 50%. And in case of pteridophytes, the dominant phase is sporophytic. Clear? In bryophytes, dominant phase is gametophytic. In pteridophytes, the dominant phase is sporophytic. So now from the book, in plants, both haploid and diploid cells can divide by mitosis. That is, mitosis can occur in diploid cells as well as in haploid cells. This ability leads to the formation of different plant bodies, sometimes haploid plant body and sometimes diploid plant body. The haploid plants produces gametes by mitosis, as you have seen in the case of algae. The plant body represents a gametophyte in the case of algae. Following fertilization, the zygote also divides by mitosis to produce diploid sporophytic plant body. In some cases, haploid spores are produced by this plant body by meiosis. When haploid spores are produced, then meiosis occurs. These in turn divide by mitosis to form haploid plant body once again. Thus, during the life cycle of any sexual reproducing plants, there is an alternation of generation between gamete producing haploid gametophytic and spore producing diploid sporophytic. In all the three life cycles, alternation of generation is present. However, different plant groups as well as individuals representing them differ in the following patterns. First is haplontic life cycle. So, sporophytic generation is represented only by one-celled zygote. There are no free-living sporophytes. Here, sporophytic generation is not present, not well developed. Only zygote represents the sporophytic phase. Meiosis in the zygote results in the formation of haploid spores. The haploid spores divide mitotically and form gametophytes. By mitosis, they form gametes. The dominant photosynthetic phase in such plants is free-living gametophyte. Their main dominant phase is gametophytic. This kind of life cycle is termed as haplontic life cycle. Examples are volvox, pyrogyra, and Clydomonas. Next is, on the other extreme is the type where the diploid sporophyte is the dominant photosynthetic independent phase of the plant, as in the case of gymnosperms. The gametophyte phase is represented by a single to few-celled haploid gametophyte. Main dominant phase is sporophytic and gametophytic phase is represented by a small few-celled gametophytic phase only. Like in gymnosperms, archegonia and pollen grain, they represents the gametophytic phase. This kind of life cycle is termed as diplontic. An alga fucus represents this pattern. So some algae fucus also represents this diplontic life cycle. This is exception. In addition, all seed-bearing plants, that is gymnosperms and angiosperms, follow this pattern with some variations, wherein the gametophytic phase is few to multicelled. Means all gymnosperms and angiosperms have diplontic life cycle, where sporophytic phase is the dominant phase. Third one is haplodiplontic life cycle. Bryophytes and pteridophytes exhibit an intermediate condition. Both phases are multicellular, however, they differ in their dominant phases. In bryophytes, the dominant phase is gametophytic, and in pteridophytes, the dominant phase is sporophytic. A dominant, independent, photosynthetic, thalloid or erect phase is represented by a haploid gametophyte, as in case of bryophytes, and it alternates with a short-lived multicellular sporophyte that is totally or partially dependent on the gametophyte, that we have studied in the case of funaria. the sporophyte remain attached to the gametophyte, in which foot seta capsule type structure is present. That structure is attached to sporophyte is attached to the gametophyte for an anchorage and nutrition. The sporophyte obtain its nutrition from the gametophyte. All bryophytes represent this type of life cycle. A diploid sporophyte is represented by a dominant, independent, photosynthetic vascular plant body. These are the features of the pteridophyte. It alternates with multicellular, saprophytic, autotrophic, independent but short-lived haploid gametophyte. In this, the gametophytic phase is short-lived. Such a pattern is known as haplodiplontic life cycle. All pteridophytes exhibit this. So already I have explained in the case in pteridophytes, dominant phase is sporophytic and the same cycle, haplodiplontic life cycle. You have studied in pteridophyta. You can draw that diagram also if you feel this diagram is difficult. Interestingly, while most algal genera are haplontic, some of them such as Ectocarpus, Polysiphonia, kelps are haplodiplontic. These are the exceptions. Mainly the alga shows haplontic life cycle, but some algae show haplodiplontic life cycle also, and Fucus, which is also an alga, also show diplontic life cycle. So these are the exceptions. Learn the name also, can be asked for 1 mark question. With this, this chapter is complete. Next time we will start with the next chapter, that is Animal Kingdom. I hope this is clear. If any doubt, you can ask me on my personal number. Thank you.